My name is Dan, and I'm the owner of Indie Audio. We are a new recording company here in Spokane. We just started last month, and we are specializing in vocal recordings. So not really much in the way of music production. Yeah. So I mean, to the best of my knowledge in Spokane, Books in Motion is about the only local place that you can go to get anything done. So I really felt like there was something more we could do to help people. So you can do it on your own nowadays, but it's very difficult, and almost every place online has really high standards. If you go out and get your own equipment, you're probably in at half the cost you would be paying someone anyway. First off, there is whatever narrator, if it's you or someone else, they have to be available for the whole process. That's a pain because you're going to come back and have revisions, you're going to have edits. Realistically, an audiobook process is probably a $1,000 to $2,000 investment, and that's not easy for anybody here, I'm sure. So we wanted to look at ways to make that more reasonable, more affordable. One of the other things with our audiobooks is we wanted to really make it feel like it was yours. So whatever we produce, it's yours at the end. We're not retaining any rights. We are not a publisher, we are producing. So we felt it was really important that you get to keep it, you get to distribute it to all of those platforms you want, and we'll just help you meet the technical requirements. So I wanted to also break down just a rough time understanding of what an audiobook has involved in it. So I like to use 80,000 words because it's a really good measure for most people. Generally speaking, depending on your narrator's speed, 80,000 word book is going to be about 9 hours done. Maybe 9.5, maybe 8:45, somewhere in there. Most likely, you are going to have at least double that in just the narrator reading. So you are going to have 15 to 20 hours of just raw recording. Then on top of that, the company, whoever it may be, me or someone else, is going to have to go back and edit that. So we're going to spend those 15 hours or those 20 hours going back, patching everything together, and making the complete book. So your 9-hour finished book is probably 35 to 40 hours left. But I wanted to give another alternative. That is podcasting. So podcasting is basically internet public radio. You have shows, a lot of shows, about pretty much every topic under the sun. You could all get together as a club and have a podcast. You could review books, you could talk to authors, you could discuss particular categories, you can have master classes, and it's a great way to get yourself out there to a community. And one of the things that I wanted to do was focus on short stories. Most short stories are around 5,000 words, give or take, and they're perfect because they're about a half hour long if you read them out. Well, that's a perfect length for a podcast, and it doesn't have the requirements that an audiobook does. So I actually brought a little sample today. I'll play it in a minute, and it's just a minute long, and what we did is we recorded it with one of our narrators, and we added effects to it. Some sound effects to make it pop a little bit more and sound a little bit more unique. And that's something I think, again, as a group, if you have a compilation of short stories or something as a group you've done, it's much more manageable price-wise because you've split up the cost. And it's something that isn't regulated by Audible or any of those. So I wanted you to kind of see that as another good way to get your work out. Well, you can have an audiobook as a podcast, but most podcasts can't be audiobooks because of the requirements. It's all technical requirements. So you can be, generally speaking, most audiobooks, like if you put something up on Audible, you can't have background noises. They limit what you can do. So it sort of lets you be a little bit more loose with your book if you want to play with it and have a little bit more fun. The benefit that I wanted to show you is you can sort of add that little bit of extra dimension of imagination to your book. Podcasts, most people do a week. You can certainly do slower than that, but you start to lose your audience. So normally you want a half-hour show once a week is pretty much the gold standard.
You said that audiobooks, or at least the requirements, you can have no background at all.
As far as I know, not on all of them. I'd have to look at each specific company's requirements. But generally speaking, you are required to keep a certain bit rate level, a certain tolerance level, and that will cut most ambient noise out, and then they generally frown upon, like that one you couldn't really hear, but there was like cafe noises in the background.
And they don't like that.
They don't like it.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting. Not many people do children's stories. I've actually been looking around about that, and no one really, because they're generally short and more picture-based, there's very little call for them that I've seen. Now, a longer, like a young adult one, then you can pretty much do whatever. But I would say you could take a children's story and possibly do like I was talking about with a podcast and add sound effects and whatnot to it. So I'm gonna lose with not having pictures. So if you add some sound effects, you might be able to make up that lost bit of imagination from the pictures, the graphics that go with it.
So could you do the sound in your studio and then add like a slideshow to it with the pages out of the book?
You
Would that
could, but again, it's the platform that you're going to view it on. Because like iTunes isn't going to show you those pictures.
No, but YouTube would.
YouTube, you could do it as a YouTube slideshow. I don't know how much traction you could get that way, but it's certainly possible. I think that there's sort of a distinct category differences that are there. I think that a lot of books would lend well to more like a radio play, and that's where you would want the multiple narrators because you need that unique aspect to get more attention. Whereas I think more traditionally, an audiobook itself, you're going to have one person who's reading as the child, reading as the adult, reading as the man and the woman, and just changing the tone of their voice.
I write chapter books for children.
Okay.
I have two of them that go together.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking of putting their total about 60,000 words between the two. And I have a reader in mind. And I was just thinking, why couldn't you come into the studio and read it like a teacher would read to their students?
You could. I don't see why you couldn't. The only thing you would have to
just have it done.
Well, you could. Very rarely do you not mess up somewhere in reading that along the way.
Well, yes.
And generally, that is not looked upon as an acceptable finished book.
And they wouldn't have to do it all at once. They could just do part of the book at a time.
Well, yes and no. You generally want to do all of the narration over the course of, depending on how big it is, over the course of maybe like a week. Because people get sick, things get changed, their posture changes. So there's going to be little subtle differences in their voice. So the more consistent their voice is, the better off you're going to be, the more quality your product is going to sound.
Do you have narrators, or is it something where you can connect us with a narrator?
We're slowly building up a little bit. Since we just started, we're just slowly building up a group of narrators. If the author wants to read it themselves, they can. Just be prepared that it's a time-consuming process. If you have someone in mind, that's totally fine, but it's basically up to the author to decide who they want at the end of the day.
So it's not related to contract through you.
Yeah, we're not going to contract. We're letting you decide what you want.
So these are not your employees?
No, not in any way.
So,
Sorry.
okay. If you had a follow-up question, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, it wasn't a follow-up.
Okay. So, like, I've been looking at ACX, and they allow you to do it for free with them getting part of the proceeds from sales.
Yes.
Do you have a program like that?
We're looking at it, since we're just starting out, it would be really hard to rely on royalties coming in. ACX, I believe, did earn, timelines wise, it's going to depend on what you want to do. If you're paying for it upfront, as it were, then it's probably going to be a month-long process. If you want to do payments, then it depends on how long you want to spread it out for. So, I mean, you know, the nice thing is you've already got your book written, so it's just icing on the cake, if you will, another way to get your stuff out there.
Also, do you have samples of the reader's voices?
We're working on that right now. The one like I heard today will be up on the website, and we'll have a couple other from her, and we're in the process of editing for another one.
I need to clarify when we were talking about background. I understand that they don't allow for ambient noise, airplanes, dogs barking, that sort of thing. Also, they don't allow for sound effects?
My understanding is that most of them don't.
Oh, I see.
I think it's a case by case, and I would have to double check specifically with any particular ones you wanted.
Something I haven't heard.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at a situation where mine's a nonfiction, and so I would have one person narrating, and then there are letters that I would want to have another person read.
Oh, okay,
Because
okay.
of different age. There's a 19-year-old that's writing the letters.
Okay.
Is that where you're talking about different narrators? Would that be something?
That would be acceptable as far as I know, at least by what you were saying.
Yeah, okay. And is there an option for somebody to, say, rent your booth?
We can do rentals, because it is our equipment, we generally are just providing an editor with it.
Okay.
But,
So you would have someone there
yes.
doing all that, and then post?
And post-production, yes.
Okay.
It will most likely, at the moment, be the same person, me,
Yeah.
the whole time.
Sure, okay. And when you're talking about digitally, are you talking about MP3?
It depends on the service, actually. Some of them take WAV and some take MP3. So we would help you set up files for both. But the software is out there that we can set it up in any format.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.